Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of explanation on solar charge controller. It's a little hard to see because I don't have very good lighting here in my room, but a lot of people try to give you explanation of it. Right here you can hook up additional panels right here, and then right here is where you hook your battery, and it has your positive, it has your negative. Right here is for hooking up an external light. You have positive and negative as well. And if you look at this charge controller, you can see this right here. It's a little rough to see, but it's your cycle duty. This is where you can turn your light on and off by pushing that. And your cycle duty, it shows where you're at on your battery, how much charge your battery has, etc. And if you get an E11 on the indicator, it means low battery or a problem with the battery. And then here's where your USBs can plug in for like a cell phone or different items. And this right here is your solar input. And the solar input is exactly why in the other video that got ripped loose, you have to have this connector that plugs in here. And then when you have that, when you connect right to the solar input on your panels, you'll have 4 outputs. And you have the adapter wire that comes in the kit for running your solar panels. And this, what this initially does is when you plug the connector in to the solar input, on the other end you hook all 4 connectors to the solar panels, and then the next move would be hook up. I always hook up my negative, now hook up my positive, and then you'll have a lead that goes to a battery, and then you're good to go. And then right here, if it's still a little bit difficult to see, so I'm trying to work with it a little bit. What that says is your DC output. Okay, right here is where you hook your lights. You'll hook your lights right here, and you have different DC outputs, where you can hook up your little LCD light that comes in the kit. There's 2 lights that come in the kit. And then the light, you push this to turn the light on, and then in the light, this is the light I had to splice from. This is the light. And initially, I'll show you the thing about the light where you don't have to push that button to turn it off. You can turn it off that way. And the light also, if you look in the light has an off and on switch. Okay. And since I use that connector to fix this so I can have the solar input, so what I can do is, you can see this right here, it has 2 wires. And if I still want to be able to utilize this light, all I have to do is splice this down. And since it's actually coated, there's be a small red wire and small black wire. You hook up your positive and your negative, and the light's not ruined. So initially, the repair that I showed you guys in the other video, I'm not actually wasting anything besides maybe my time if it doesn't work, or I might pop a fuse if it doesn't work correctly, but it's trial and error on that end. But usually a lot of that stuff is typically like house worn, like when you have a receptacle, which is a wall outlet or a light switch. You have 2 hots, and then you'll have 2 hots, and then you'll have a green screw on a receptacle or a light switch, or most electronic appliances. I mean, it can be on the back of an oven or anything. You always have like your 2 hots, and then you'll have your green wire, which your green wire is represented as your ground. Like a problem I've had with an oven is the oven I had, the old oven I had since I bought my little mobile home. It was an electric oven. It broke, so initially I just removed the screws from the old oven and changed the 220 plug. And on that's a little different. White goes on white, red goes on red, black goes on black, and green is ground. And the same thing with a dryer. My dryer went out and it had a different plug, so I just changed the plug. A lot of the stuff's simple, and I'm not responsible for anybody trying to do it themselves. It's just I have experience doing it, and I've been successful because I studied electrical wiring for 5 years. I'm not a professor, but I do have friends who are professional professionals, from gold key electricians all the way down to your regular service guys, going in and fixing basic receptacles, light switches, etc., and a lot of that. And how these guys work is, most people understand the solar charge controller, after I talked to my friend, just because he's got a degree in this, and this is something that I'm interested in, how a solar charge controller initially works. What it does is, right here, from when this plug-in is plugged into your solar panels, what it actually initially does, the solar panels collect the sun light. And the reason you have to have this charge controller is because when the power comes in, this charge controller takes DC and converts it to AC. And it works as like a battery charger on a dead battery, like a trickle charge, which is a slow charge, and that's how it initially charges the batteries that will be connected right here. So that's pretty self-explanatory. And a lot of people don't discuss this. I don't discuss it in an over-analytical way. I discuss it in a way that would be practical and more of it. It has less of a learning curve. It's more practical of explaining it in a fast end versus having to break it all down. I can break it all down into the way I do. This is more practical personally, and something I rather see than somebody talking for 30 minutes to the ins and outs. I just discussed the whole entire thing with you guys in the most simplest terms possible, and it's just the way it is. And the solar charge controller, how it charges the batteries like a trickle charge, and then how the DC goes into it, converts to AC. A microwave is very similar to that. When you, like, if you use a microwave to heat food up, okay, you initially have the microwave plugged into a wall receptacle that is AC. AC is actually powering the microwave, and what is actually heating your food in the microwave is DC, because what the microwave does, it changes AC to DC. So initially the DC is what heats the food up, and that's how that works. It's like a little transformer component. Not exactly 100% on that, because sometimes I have amnesia, so it's hard for me to remember everything. And here's another basic example of DC and AC. Okay, say I want a 220 welder for doing welding, and I cannot afford a 220 welder. Okay, I buy a 110 welder, and the item is called a rectifier. Okay, I plug the rectifier into the wall, then I plug the 110 welder into the rectifier. What a rectifier does is it makes 220. It takes the 110 and converts the 110 into 220. And 220 is where you want to be if you're welding, because it puts out a hotter output for your weld design. So a lot of these components are not that really needed to be over analytical or technical. I just explain it, and what I've learned is very simple. And you can follow up. You can go to Chat GPT, and you can look up the same things, and they'll give you the over analytical version of it. And Chat GPT is going to be much better outlet than where I start studying with Bing and Google and etc. But I also talk to people I know who have doctorate degree, and they're out in the field of doing electric work. And one of the mistakes that I initially made when I hooked up my garage wire and my 110 is I use a little bit bigger breakers, like 20 amp breakers versus like a standard 15. And my friends and family who are electricians told me the initial reason why a lot of people will use smaller breakers, because the initial thing with the breaker is, if it has an issue, it trips the breaker, which means you have to reset the breaker. And I really didn't want to do that, because I told them, I said, the reason I ran bigger breakers because I actually use saws, skill saws, drills, power tools, and stuff like that. So I went a little bit bigger, so I would not initially be tripping it or potentially burning anything up. This video is just my trial and error, my experience, my learning, asking questions, studying gauges of wire, like 12-aught wire, 10-aught wire, and then you got 0/4 wire, bigger stuff. There's just all kinds of variants in doing wiring. And this is just an informative video. I'm not responsible for anything anybody does. But if you're not experienced in it or have any kind of training in wiring, I'd highly advise working with somebody or under somebody who does it, like a friend who actually is in the field, not somebody off the street, especially if you're doing any kind of house wiring. But this is mainly about solar, so solar's very safe. And the only other issue with solar is even with the smaller solar charge controller, you're initially going to need a power inverter of some size. DeWalt makes one. It's like $1,500. It's like $15, and it's like 300 watts. You can charge a cell phone with it, and it gives you two AC 110 plug-ins. And I've actually used it because you can plug it into the accessory. Like in the old days, it's where you push the light. You push it in to light a cigarette, the accessory in the truck. And I know some people will not probably younger generation won't understand that. But you plug it in the accessory. And with my truck running, I can run a 110 fan, which is pretty good in summertime because my AC wasn't working. And I had a pole type fan, so I kind of stuck it behind the seat. And it was really hot. I just kicked the fan on, which sounds kind of redneck and hillbilly. Well, that's kind of what I am. I'm the kind of guy that may not have money, but I do have ideas. Sometimes my ideas are highly successful, sometimes they're not. But I'll continue with my trial and error, and I'll study people who are over analytical, and then I'll break it down into a category which is not so complex and more feasible for me to do, versus I don't have $100,000 in tools, but I might have $5,000 in tools, and my $5,000 in tools, or even less, I can do just as much as they can. But you have to use your mind and the materials and the assets that you have if you don't initially have money to do all this. So this is another long video, and I apologize for that. But this is just some ins and outs of how electric works, and that is all.